inside from boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs and Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
With GB News, the news at 11 o'clock. It looks like we're in for a general election in the second half of this year. That's according to the Prime Minister today. Rishi Sunak admitted as much in a visit to the East Midlands. Both Labour and the Liberal Democrats have been pushing for a spring election, but he refused to be drawn on that, saying instead he wants to focus on the economy, cutting taxes and tackling illegal migration. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer says he's ready to go to the polls now. And he criticised the Prime Minister for delaying the vote at all. Sir Keir Starmer vowed in his New Year speech to stand up for working people, saying the character of politics will change if Labour wins power. Well, our other main story tonight, heavy rain is continuing to batter Britain tonight, causing flooding havoc for residents, businesses and motorists. Motorways have been waterlogged. Take a look at these pictures if you're watching on TV of scenes just outside Southampton. Homes have been flooded. Cows were drowned in one field in Derbyshire. Derbyshire Constabulary tried to get a rescue effort there, but some cows were saved, but some drowned earlier. Nottinghamshire County Council declared a major incident along the River Trent because of flooding and rising river levels there. And large parts of North Yorkshire, Worcestershire, Northamptonshire, Cornwall and Gloucestershire are under floodwater tonight. The Met Office has warned of power cuts and travel disruption right across all affected areas. And train company GWR is advising people not to travel at all after its tracks were flooded and routes were made impassable. Well, let's just bring you some detail on that breaking news we brought you about an hour ago about a boat in London that's gone down because of rainfall. The Thames Coast Guard is saying everyone is accounted for after a party boat sunk in the River Thames after rain. The floating bar, restaurant and nightclub moored up at Temple Pier went down after the deck flooded first of all. Local officials, however, said everyone was safe, but the Port of London authorities advised vessels tonight to pass Temple Pier with great caution. Now, unsealed court documents in the United States have revealed more allegations against Prince Andrew, shining a spotlight on his connections to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, including details of an alleged orgy with underage girls. Bill Clinton and the late Professor Stephen Hawking are also among over 150 names mentioned as having connections to the now dead sex offender. Many of those named are not accused of any wrongdoing. The unsealed files were released as part of a civil lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell, who's serving a 20-year prison sentence herself for recruiting underage girls for Epstein. More documents are expected to be unsealed and unredacted in the coming days. In Lebanon, thousands gathered for the funeral of Hamas's military leader, widely thought to have been responsible for the October the 7th attacks on Israel. Salah al-Aruri was killed in a suspected Israeli drone strike in Beirut 2 days ago. A special advisor to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, in Israel didn't confirm Israel's involvement, but commented it had been a surgical strike against the Hamas leadership. And lastly, teenager Luke Littler has vowed to come back stronger after losing in the World Darts Championship final. The 16-year-old was beaten by Luke Humphries, who claimed the title, as well as £500,000 in prize money. He's pledged to donate part of that to Prostate Cancer UK, a charity he says is close to his heart. The winner told GB News he's proud to be the new champion.
It feels incredible. You know, it's something I've obviously dreamed of for many, many years. And, you know, to go out and do it last night in such emphatic fashion, you know, it's so pleasing for me. You know, worked incredibly hard for this moment. And, you know, to go on and win in my first world final is, you know, an amazing feat.
This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen, and joining me tonight is a man who may contain nuts. It's Paul Cox, and a man who has a lot in common with James Bond. He also needs a trigger warning. It's Nick Dixon. Are you doing both well? You've both opted for something from the grey palette, I see.
I have, yeah. I was eating nuts when we met this evening. I'm gonna have to make sure I'm doing something special every time we meet now.
OK, they might not have been the type that I was thinking of, but no, that's fine if you think...
Have I gone very literal with your joke?
Yeah, fair enough. Nick, you doing all right?
Well, it's funny you compare me to Bond, because last time I wore this outfit, I was compared on X to George Clooney. Just saying, I'm happy with either. Right. I'll take either. They're both accurate.
You've been compared to a Batman. Not the best Batman.
How dare you?
What?
How dare you?
They were thinking of the Nespresso adverts, I think.
Oh.
His best work.
The plastic nipples would be the giveaway, I suppose. Anyway, let's move on and take a look at Friday's front pages. The Daily Mail says no way back. The front page of the Telegraph says Navy has so few sailors, ships must be scrapped. The Financial Times goes with Sunak signals election will be held in second half of this year. The Eye says no tax cuts for 2 years under Labour, hints Starmer. The Guardian says Labour will fight fire with fire, Starmer warns Tories. And the Daily Star, Operation Oompa Loompa. Those are your front pages. Right, what have the I gone with, Paul?
No tax cuts for 2 years under Labour, hints Starmer, Steve. So the leader suggests, a Labour government may not be in a position to cut income tax without substantial economic growth in the future, which sounds very much to me like a Tory policy, or it sounds very Tory to me. It sounds like the sort of thing that they've been saying for a year or two now, and of course he's absolutely right. The thing that fascinates me more than anything is that all we're really getting with Keir Starmer is a change of personnel, which we desperately need, but I don't think we're going to change of anything else, really. He's going to be heading up a party that would love a lot more change, but I don't think Keir Starmer himself is going to deliver it, because he can't. The country's just not in a position with its economic position to deliver the sort of tax cuts and public spending they want, I think.
Nick, it's interesting that he's talking about growth. I mean, everyone's talking about growth. Liz Truss sits there saying, you see, I mentioned growth early doors. No one else is talking about borrowing to achieve it, but still it feels like she calls it a win.
Yeah, but do you actually know his policy? He says, I do want lower taxes, but the first lever we look for is growth. So he's going to look for a lever. Is that what he's promising? Grasping in the dark. I mean, does anyone know what Starmer's actually going to do? He did this speech today. It was boring, nothing was in it. Sunak then, some people think to distract from that speech, made this sudden announcement that he's going to have this election, working assumption that it'll be in the second half of the year, which he'd never said before. So that was sort of bigger news, which sort of trumps Starmer's non-speech. And I just don't know what he's actually going to do. He's still doing the Ming Vase thing, isn't he? Trying to not drop the Ming Vase, have no clear policies. And, yeah, I mean, we're about to do the headline that he says they're going to fight fire with fire. Do you really believe that Starmer versus Sunak? Isn't it more like dousing each other with lukewarm water?
So some sort of pillow fight / flannel type incident.
I don't see it.
No, me either. He has accused Sunak of squatting in number 10, which is probably a fair accusation, because obviously Sunak's now come out and categorically said that there won't be a general election in the first half of this year. The I say it'll be in autumn. He doesn't actually say that. He says it'll be in the second half of the year. We all know it can't be any later than in January of 2025. What's really interesting to me is I can't remember what the precedent, the reason this came around is, but they don't like to have two new administrations in place, one in the US and one in the UK, at the same time, because for obvious reasons, I guess, there's chaos and disorganisation. But if we were to have a general election in, say, October, and the almighty great Trump got back in November, that would be quite something, wouldn't it?
Who's they? Is it the New World Order?
I think...
When you say they don't want this, who's running the UK and the US?
I was talking to Lewis earlier, and he said...
But surely part of the they is journalists, because you want to wring the pips out of this kind of news. What you don't want is two big elections going off all at once.
Yeah. And it's a benefit for Sunak because, of course, it gives him a bit more time to do more things with the economy and get some of the people who are sitting at home thinking, I can't vote for Starmer, maybe get them out to vote for Tories. Though it won't be enough, we all pretty much know. But it is weird that Starmer says that he's squatting in Downing Street. Don't Labour like squatters, surely? Or was that more Corbyn's Labour? Don't you see them siding with the squatter over the landlord as a general policy?
It's an unfair comment. He's not squatting, he's stood up. He's just that short. Let's take a look at The Guardian. What have they gone with, Nick?
Yeah, so they have this Labour will fight fire with fire, Starmer warns Tories, which we've basically covered there. But then they've got another story, mortgage costs to rise by 19 billion as deals end. So the casual observer who, let's say, rents might have thought, oh, this is over, this kind of interest rate mortgage issue. Of course, it isn't, because 1.5 million households are expected to reach the end of cheaper deals in 2024, which will cost an average of £1,800 a year for the typical family, according to the Resolution Foundation think tank, because the Bank of England is expected to cut interest rates below 4% by the end of the year from 5.25. But the problem is, if it runs out now, you're still in the 5.25, so they're calling this a ticking time bomb, but it is The Guardian, so that's the kind of thing they would say about the Tories, of course.
It's also entirely opposite to what the right-wing press said yesterday, which was that mortgage rates are now going to drop. There's going to be a sort of war between the lenders on who can offer the lowest rates over the next 6 months, because inflation has dropped. I mean, it's not where we want it to be, but it has dropped. And it kind of, for me, it makes a mockery of everything that happened in the markets in 2023. You know, it seemed to be artificially blown up after Truss. That's how it felt to me, as a reaction to Truss. Artificially blown up, and now it's coming back down gently and settling roughly to where it was, just perhaps a little bit above where it needed to be. And I don't think we're going to get either thing. I don't think we're going to get super-duper rates on mortgages, and I don't think we're going to get this impending doom the Guardian they're talking about.
Just to be Mr. Boring, to answer the question about how is this like the opposite of yesterday's story, they're not actually. So this is about the fact that if you're on a fixed term and you are living in the past, you've got the great rates from before all of that, you'll bump up to a new rate, which yesterday we heard that the mortgage providers are competing against. So whichever one they compete down to, it's still going to be a massive increase from what you've got if you're fixed like I am.
Certainly, yeah, certainly if you've over-borrowed.
And it also means no one's going to...
You over-borrowed, Steve.
I might have I've overreached again. But it also means you're not going to find another fixed deal because we've got this threat of the interest rate coming down at some point. So no one's going to agree a fixed term now. See, they're just going to pay the more painful variable one for a while. I don't know. It's a bad time to be... Or me, is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, thanks. Next up is the Telegraph, Paul. What have they got?
The Navy has so few sailors, ships must be scrapped. This is an astonishing story, really. The Royal Navy has so few sailors that it has to decommission 2 warships to staff its new class of frigates. This is according to the Telegraph. So HMS Westminster, which was recently refurbished at a huge cost to the taxpayer, of course, and HMS Argyle are going to be decommissioned later this year. So they're decommissioning these ships that they've spent a lot of money doing up in order to man and woman and the new frigates.
Don't worry about saying man in that sense as well. In case you get into an online argument, it comes from the French meaning to use your hands. Man the decks.
It does it?
Yeah.
OK.
So if anyone tells you off about and woman...
Making note for trolls.
Yeah, there you go. Bit of French.
It's no surprise, though, is it? Is it really a surprise that nobody wants to join the Navy?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because, I mean, one thing, our Navy obviously used to be the best in the world. Now it's sort of token, isn't it? You don't really think of our Navy as doing much at all. And two, I don't know if this is a direct cause, but it's something I've noticed. It's just... If people who are patriotic are so attacked in the culture and frowned upon, the idea of nationalism is thought to be almost a dirty word. You know, we're all supposed to be globalists and citizens of Europe. Well, then who's going to feel like, you know what I want to do is join the Royal Navy? Who's going to do it? Is that what you meant?
No. Well, no. That was a marvellous point. And I agree, because we do have a generation of kids now that have kind of been told that Great Britain is bad. So who's going to fight for the bad? It's not true, and we need to defend ourselves, and we're going to do that with less ships, apparently.
But there'll be AI at some point.
And when Labour get in, there won't be any problems. There'll be no war and no anger.
I can't tell if the whole country is collapsing or if it's just that I started doing this job about 2 years ago, so I follow all the news and have to look at all the awful news all the time.
Do you think you might have caused the collapse? That's another option.
Possible as well.
Okay.
I actually think it's both. I think it is collapsing and I'm noticing it more because of my job.
Oh, dear. Well, that's the front pages all sorted. On the way next, saving lives on the Golden Gate Bridge, but maybe costing lives with a strike. The universe requires balance. We'll find out more soon.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm still Stephen Allen and still here with Paul Cox and Nick Clooney. Sorry, an easy mistake to make when you're wearing that outfit, sorry. Let's go to the Daily Mail, Nick, and the list of celebrities in the Epstein files have been released, and you can sing them to Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire.
You can, but I won't. That's the bonus footage they have to pay for. Yes, the A-list stars, politicians and leading figures named in the Jeffrey Epstein files. Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Naomi Campbell and Leonardo DiCaprio are among the famous faces in bombshell 1,000-page document. Although we should stress that poor old Leo was just mentioned in it. He hasn't actually done anything, and Naomi. Some of the others, a bit more questionable. But, yeah, so I don't know where to start, really. There's so much. Prince Andrew is alleged to have maybe been involved in an orgy. And this is following... There was already the claim that he felt someone's breast through a puppet, right? That was the...
Well,
Joanna...
He was copying the actions of a puppet.
Joburg.
Yeah.
He had Didn't he have the puppet from Spitting Image?
Yeah, but someone else had the puppet, put the puppet's hands on Maxwell's bosoms.
Right.
And then the allegation is that Prince Andrew then copied the... I mean, it's difficult.
I see.
Steve, could you say bosoms again, please?
Bosoms.
Thank you, sir.
It is. I mean, there's so much in it. I don't know where to start. I mean, Stephen Hawking is in there now. Stephen Hawking appears with Epstein saying, "Can you clarify that Stephen Hawking wasn't involved in an orgy?" So we don't know from that if he was or not. We just know that Epstein is saying, can you tell people he wasn't? There was also this thing going around the internet about Stephen Hawking that, like, it was a transcript. Did Jeffrey ever talk to you about Stephen Hawking's proclivities? And the answer is, yes, he liked watching undressed midgets solve complex equations on a too high-up chalkboard. But I want to clarify, that was fake. And I want to apologise if the term midgets is offensive, but that was going around the internet today. But that's fake, just to clarify. Probably didn't need to read it. But the point is, there's a lot in the document.
Just to scare Steve, I'm going to read out some fake stuff I saw on the internet today as well.
How much do I have to apologise?
Well, a lot of it's in the document. And there's a thing about Bill Clinton, which is that Jeffrey Epstein claiming Bill Clinton, quote, liked them young. Joanna Joburg told lawyers. But again, this is just Epstein saying things about people. So, you know, don't come and get me, whoever's, you know, Bill Clinton's lawyers. I'm just reading from the papers.
If anything happens to you now, we'll know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, did you know, I mean, Hillary Clinton refers to the Epstein client list as the terminal list. Did you know that? I'm just a joke. It's a joke. It's satire. I'm quite scared now. Please don't kill me.
Paul, what's your take on this?
Well, we haven't learned a lot from this, I don't think, today, or not as much as we'd probably like to. It's not a list of people. It's a list of people that were mentioned in a conversation about a potential list of people. And this article itself, I mean, you know, not one to stick up for Trump usually, but he gets a mention here alongside Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton. But both of those people were kind of implicated more so, although not to any great degree. But Donald Trump, the only reason he's in this particular conversation is the question was asked did he go to the island, and the answer was no. And now he's next to Prince Andrew, who seems to have played some sex spitting image game.
Yeah, and just to be clear what this is, it's the 8th release from the 2015 Jeffrey defamation case. So they just keep releasing more and more. So it's going to run and run. It's a whole Netflix series, at least. Very long series.
At least Bill Clinton and Trump both were friends with him before, or an acquaintance, and then stopped being after his first conviction. whereas other people carried on being friends with him after, you know, he was found guilty of what he was found guilty of. So
which people, Steve?
Again, I'm not saying. I'm terrified right now because you never know. Right, let's move on before it all goes wrong to the Times, Paul. And the post office scandal boss has been told to return her CBE, but she'll probably put the wrong postage on it.
Yeah, probably. It wouldn't get there anyway. Return your CBE, ministers urge post office scandal boss. So the former boss of the post office should do the right thing and hand back her CBE for her role in the Horizon accounting scandal, a minister says. So, of course, we're talking about Paula Reynolds here, who was in charge of the post office during this absolutely horrendous IT programme scandal in which perfectly innocent postmasters were accused of stealing money, some sent to jail, most losing their livelihoods, some have died without being exonerated publicly. And we're just starting, because of this ITV drama that's come out this week, we're just starting to see a little bit of the story, and people are kind of up in arms, and rightly so. I'm not sure that anyone should be judged by one moment, but this CBE was given to Paula Reynolds on the back of her doing this great job for the post office, and actually she oversaw one of the greatest catastrophes of modern industry, particularly in the UK, in which innocent people were accused of all sorts of dastardly things, and nobody, especially Paula Reynolds, came to their aid.
And we knew about this before the drama, and she didn't give it back then, so, Nick, surely there's no chance now.
Well, it's very unlikely, but the question is sort of whether she morally should, and I think there is a case for that. I first heard about this when Andrew Bridgen raised it all, and it is shocking, isn't it? More than 700 staff were accused of fraud. Someone killed themselves over it, tragically, Martin Griffiths, because he was hounded over £100,000, which he didn't owe. It's really disgusting. And Ed Davey comes out very, very badly, seems to have refused a meeting with Alan Bates. There's a screenshot I've seen, which I think is real. Appears to be real on X, which is a letter from May 2010 where he declines the meeting. Now, he's saying he got bad advice. OK, so he doesn't come out well. No one comes out well out of it. And I think normally this kind of thing's silly when you hear about people giving back their CBs or whatever, but in this case, I sort of think maybe you should.
Well, she'll be taking a substantial pension as well. I mean, I wanted to add the context of not judging someone on one thing, but when you look at the big picture of what happened as part of this Horizon scandal, it's very difficult to find any way to defend Paula Reynolds. Very difficult, because the person at the top is paid a lot of money because they have a lot of responsibility and a huge amount of accountability, of which she appears to have taken none.
And those people who were found guilty or served a bit of time were judged for just one thing. So I think you're being kind.
Yeah.
And that's what people say about you, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, not other people say other things, but it's other kind of thing. To the Telegraph, never balance. To the Telegraph, Nick, and due to the doctor's strike, relatives are being asked to help out. I mean, I'm not trained, but give me a scalpel and I'll have a crack.
I've always said that about you, Steve. Have a go, hero. Yeah, it's take your relatives out of hospital. Counterintuitive. NHS says as junior doctors' strikes hit. So, shocking headline. I'll be a bit of a Steve and Alan here and say the story's not quite what you think, because it's actually they should collect relatives as soon as they could be safely discharged in order to free up beds, which is surely the case anyway. The hospital says they don't need to be here anymore. Can you pick them up? You don't generally, hopefully, go, no, I'll come in a couple of weeks. I'm in Marbella. Hopefully you do pick them up. So it's not really any different. The different part is perhaps the A&Es telling people to only use the service if it's life-threatening. That's kind of worrying. But the beds thing, it might be a non-story a little bit.
Yes, it probably is. I mean, a lot of these type of stories which we hook onto are just a small amount of a granular truth within the great big picture of things, and of course that's how we make our living. So long may it continue. But it's not. Let's say it was true. It wouldn't be a solution, would it? It wouldn't be a solution at all. The solution is to stop the strike. And let's not misguide ourselves here. This type of coverage is exactly what the BMA want. They want A&E to be struggling. They want hospitals to be going on to red alert. They want stories in the paper to say this is disastrous, because they're trying to bolster their case. And the reason we're seeing more and more stories like this is because they're not making any progress whatsoever. All they're really appearing to do is alienate junior doctors from both the NHS and patients, which is quite the feat to achieve in this time. You know, on the back of COVID, when we were all clapping and dancing for the NHS, we go 3 years later and now we're booing them.
Well, there's another.
I wasn't dancing, just to clarify. Or clapping.
Did you clap?
Clapped once.
Yeah.
I felt bad for my neighbours, but that was it.
But so you've got the clapping thing in history, but more recently you've got the surveys last year of people supporting the strikes. And that public goodwill has been chipped away at. And we talked about it on this show, saying all you need is a headline. You don't need to endanger lives. You just need to be in the papers. Make a big deal about doing a strike in a way that won't endanger anyone. We'd sit here and talk about it.
I think if they took photographs of knackered junior doctors slumped over at the end of a shift, that would have much more of an impact than dead patients that were laying in beds because there was no doctor's shift. So I just don't see ethically how they can win this argument now. I mean, even if they got 35% out of it, I don't think it'd be good money to keep.
OK, on to The Guardian, Paul, and there's now a mesh net on the Golden Gate Bridge, so if anyone jumps off, they won't die, but they might strain themselves.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Suicide prevention net beneath the Golden Gate Bridge completed, say officials. So, I mean, this is a good story. They had a deadline of 2024. It was opened on the 1st of January, so they met their deadline. And this is the long-awaited suicide prevention barrier at the Golden Gate Bridge, and it sits 20 feet, 6 metres below the deck, and it's made of steel. So it's a deterrent. I mean, if you hit it, if you fall 6 feet onto a steel net, you're going to hurt yourself, you're not going to kill yourself. But I guess they've just made it more of a sort of obstacle course now. So if you sorry, I'm laughing at myself. If you manage to survive the first thing, you just climb to the end of that and jump off, don't you?
And then have to turn a big wheel upside down.
Yeah, and win money.
But, yeah, Nick, isn't another take, which this article doesn't talk about at all, yeah, it will deter people from jumping off that bridge, but does that necessarily mean you'll reduce the number of suicides? There are other ways, I suppose I'm saying. I
don't know, I think it's worth a try, because people so often, they're in the moment and they try and do something, and if it didn't work or if they saw there was a net on it or something, upon reflection, they might be stopped from doing it the following time. You can't do this on every bridge, but I'm in favour of at least trying it. So someone in my family did commit suicide via this method, which is why I'm sort of struggling to talk about it. But so I just think try anything. It's worth a try.
Can I just say I wish I'd said what Nick had said, rather than the climbing over the net. But I mean, it's a very good point. You know, they were going to raise the barriers, but they decided against that because it would ruin the view, which I guess is a point. But where there's a will, there's a way.
OK, well, you've made it halfway. Impressive. In the next section, your hormones are making you right-wing, which is odd because Hitler surely had half the amount of testosterone. And the end of handwriting. Find out more next.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Video. Welcome back to Headliners to the Times. Nick, apparently hard-right voters are hormonal, and the EU is worried that your cycles are going to synchronise at the next elections.
Yeah, this is absurd. I mean, hormonal voters could hand hard-right victory, EU chief fears, which is ironic because he's talking about fear in the piece. So it's Josep Borrell, the EU's foreign policy chief, did this little speech in the Italian Alps, as one does, and he came out with this idea that people are voting on fear. So in Europe, apparently, we'll enter a survival mode based on fear, and that may promote the ascent or strengthening of the extreme right. And that's why the hormonal headline. So it's an absurd attempt to categorise very valid concerns as fear, hormonal. It's ridiculous, really, because it's quite a rational concern to be concerned about mass immigration in Europe.
It's gaslighting, isn't it?
Of course it's gaslighting. It's ridiculous. I mean, what we need from our leaders in Europe is to take the issues of immigration and of fertility very, very seriously. But instead what we get is nonsense like this. I'll just give you a little stat, because I was talking to Paul Morland about this, who's a demographics expert. If Britain continues at its current birth rate, by 2080, it will have 38% foreign-born people, which is not first-generation immigrants or anything. It's people literally born in a different country. And you just say, OK, is that necessarily good for a cohesive society? If we continue to decline and hit South Korean type of birth rates, which is currently 0.8, we would have 54% foreign-born people in the country by 2083. So it just gives you an idea. So all of Europe is looking at stats like that and this kind of discussion, and they're saying, is this good for, do we want that in all the social problems therein, right? And there's lots of other problems, the ageing population and so on. So there are very serious concerns across Europe, and the idea of saying that it's a fear response based on hormones is just absurd.
Yeah, to call it irrational as well makes...
highly rational.
Makes out that as if a fear response is never rational, which you can't tell. It's just, instead of arguing the point, which, you know, I'm a big fan of argue the point, not all the other things on that argumentative pyramid of techniques. And it's one of the techniques. He's finding a different way of attacking instead of addressing the issue.
Well, that's exactly what he's doing. He makes it sound like it's my dad talking to my mum after she's slightly done something wrong during the menopause. But
she gone right-wing?
No, no, she hasn't gone right-wing. She's just gone doolally. We might not want this, but he does. I mean, this guy's a Spanish socialist. He's very much in line with the EU values and the open borders, all that sort of stuff. The statistics you were talking about are wet dream stuff for guys like this. This is what they would love to see. They would love just Europe to be one place where everyone lives, no real identity, no real patriotism, just land. We all live together and everyone gets on well, with the occasional terrorist attack, I'd imagine. But it's never going to happen. It's never, ever going to happen. Nick, it feels like you desperately want to say something.
No. My brain is just literally going, those stats I gave her, if we keep our current dependency ratio. I'm worried about some weird nerd on X tweeting me. Because the point is, we've got this problem with, you know, looking after elderly people and all these kind of things and keeping our economies going. That's why I was talking about it. And immigration replaces birth rates. So that's why people are right to be worried about immigration. But sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and just the thing that I was obsessing about in my head is your entire point still would have made sense if you just said dream.
Yeah, why
for some reason.
What did I say?
Now you make him apologise.
I'm not going to repeat.
Oh, right, did I? I didn't even know I'd said that.
It would be a dream. Doesn't matter what type of dream.
Yeah.
Most dreams are
Thanks,
good.
Steve.
Can I make one more very better point than I've made? Unless you want to say something, Paul.
I don't want to say anything.
I forgot, because this is key. This idea that it's the far right as well is actually quite ridiculous, because there was an argument that there was a kind of irrational, neurotic purity instinct amongst the far right. You know, Hitler famously worried about germs and things, and then that can escalate in extreme cases to a kind of to where you genocide entire peoples because of this extreme purity. Talk about, you know, Jonathan Haidt's moral foundations theory that the right is associated with the purity instinct, right? But the irony now is that the so-called far right is defending Jewish people from anti-Semitism from people who've come in who hate Israel. So I don't think you know, his fears about the far right are also kind of obsolete, if you ask me.
I agree. I agree.
Right, let's crack on to The Guardian, Paul, and there's a push to remove these forever chemicals from our water. Does that mean they're leaving the poops in there?
No, I think they're quite happy for poops to stay there, actually. It's the stuff within the poops. The race to destroy the toxic forever chemicals polluting our world. So forever chemicals, which to me sounds like some sort of collectible fluffy toy, are in our drinking water sources, sea foam and spray, rain and groundwater, sea ice, you name it, it's in there. Essentially, they're microplastics. Forgive me if I pronounce this incorrectly. Polyfluoroalkyl.
Nice, yeah.
And essentially just microscopic plastics which make up an increasingly large amount of what washes up on our shores, is found in drinking water, and it's known to be a carcinogenic, it's known to cause cancer. But then everything is, isn't it?
Yeah. They're bigger molecules than our bodies used to, so they just kind of build up and they're there forever. Have you seen is the film called Dark Waters, the one with the Hulk in it, where it's all about getting these fluoride chemicals, and all the water companies have basically just buried their heads in the sand. And it's a bit late now. I know they've come up with some ways of getting rid of them, but if they're in your body, it's going to stay in there.
I know, and it bothers me that the one thing we just really need, water, we can't get right. You know, it bothers me a little bit. We can't even get the water clean. And you have all these endocrine disruptors I've heard about on the internet, making everyone effeminate or something. You've got fluoride I've heard about from other nutters on the internet. But these things do have some basis, I think. And then apparently there's even human blood in the water. Don't tell Lewis Schaefer, he'll start drinking tap water again. But, that's all I've got, actually, on that.
The Daily Mail, Nick, and mountain rescuers say that they're busy because people want to go up whatever they see on Instagram, which is why I only follow models.
Yes, good idea. So Instagram tourists are blamed for a record number of call-outs by mountain rescue teams as unprepared climbers flock to dangerous beauty spots for selfies. Funny phrase, dangerous beauty spot. And I guess I'm from one, because one they're talking about is the Lake District, and of course the other ones like Snowdonia and so on. But that people need to stay out of the lakes if you don't know what you're doing, basically. That is the message for my people, because you've got Langdale, Ambleside Mountain Rescue. I went to school in Ambleside. And they're finding that people are basically thinking, oh, we'll get a selfie up on a fell. And they're idiots, and they go up there and they hurt themselves or they get stuck and they don't know what they're doing. It reminds me of an old Jasper Carrot sketch. You didn't have your bloody Kendall mint cake. All right, you're up there. You don't know what you're doing. You're calling out the mountain rescue. They don't have the resources. So basically, if you're an idiot and you go on Instagram and you want a selfie at the top of a mountain, just stay out of the lakes if you could. That'd be nice.
These things are called fell. We've given them the hint about what has previously happened.
We call them dies, and
this is just another group of people who would do anything for likes, isn't it? And it's a shame. I can understand their passion if it was a passion for climbing and wanted to see these wonderful sights, but they don't really, do they? They want to get up there, take a photograph of themselves, which no one wants to see, take a photograph of the view, I understand that, but themselves in the view for likes. So it's all about them. So occasionally we're going to lose a couple of them, and I don't really see the problem with that.
Brilliant. Well, to the Telegraph, Paul. And some exams will no longer be handwritten, which saves you copying out whatever ChatGPT's written for it.
Yes. GCSE English will no longer be handwritten under exam board plans. From 2025, pupils taking the subject with EdXL, which is the board, will be allowed to type their answers. So the move, which experts have warned must not signify the beginning of the end of handwriting for children, aims to make it easier for pupils to edit their answers and simpler for papers to be marked. I think it will be the beginning of the end for handwriting. I think there's a very strong argument that typing is probably a better way of doing an English exam. And not wanting to sound massively old, but handwriting was a key part of the English exam. I'm pretty sure it was when I was doing English language, English lit at GCSE level. The quality of your handwriting, particularly with certain modules, did make a difference. And the other thing they never did in my time was make it easier for the pupils. I mean, this making it easier for the pupils business, when did this come into fruition?
But
Well, that's not true. You used to be able to get a little bit of extra time if you were dyslexic, didn't you? Which I was always against.
Do you know what? In my school, they didn't. They just gave them these yellow glasses.
Really?
Yeah. You don't need extra time. You just need some cool glasses.
It does work. Reading off yellow paper makes it easier, for
I agree, but there was none of this business going on, and probably for the, to the detriment.
Isn't it unfair, though, to people with good handwriting got better GCSE results? Girls got, but you see, and actually, if you look at the stats, girls do get better GCSE results. So, have you found the issue here?
Another Miss Sandra's conspiracy.
Yeah,
it is a bit of a problem, because if I did an exam now for some weird reason, I would fail on pure legibility because I can't write by hand anymore. We spent years in school learning this lovely joined-up style. I've completely lost it now. Like so many things at school, Paul, I'm starting to think, will I ever use it again? Those equations. The handwriting's gone, pointless algebra.
Do you climb a rope much?
I don't. I never could at the time, either, to be fair.
Someone tweeted me the other day, because, I like a little bit of science and maths, and someone... Someone was giving it, since school, has anyone ever used the Pythagoras theorem?
Hello?
Like, well, whoever built your house, you hope they did. Otherwise, your roof's going to be a bit of a death trap, but no mind.
Nice comeback.
Love it. Yeah. I'm defending Pythagoras. The Daily Mail next, Nick. And if you want to get on the housing market, all you have to do is be over 55 and willing to make some lifestyle choices.
Yes, very diplomatically put there, Steve. Yeah, UK to get its first ever LGBTQ plus only housing for over 55s if new scheme in Manchester is approved. And this comes from the Great Places Housing Group, and I've checked them out. They seem to be a private group that doesn't have any government ownership. And the reason that's relevant to me is, if you're doing this via the government, I have a bit of a problem with it. But if you're doing it privately, let's say we can have then it's freedom of association, right? So maybe this should be OK to have, just a gay-only block, as long as you can then have a straight-only block. But I feel like that wouldn't go down so well in the media, because then it's freedom of association.
I know they're well-meaning, these progressive types. They genuinely are. I don't think they realise quite how close they are to right-wing ideas sometimes, though. Right-wing ideas of the middle 20th century. If you replaced it with any other group of people, there would be some questions to ask. The other idea, of course...
It's segregation. It's supposed to be
exactly what it is.
Ends up as segregation.
And have they asked the people? That is a massive community of people, LGBTQ+. That's virtually everybody except us three.
And over 55s.
And over 55. So, I don't know. Perhaps it's a good thing. It just feels a little bit... It just feels iffy to me. They don't need a safe space.
Though, it's a smaller group because it's both over 55 and a member of the community, not an or. Otherwise, that would be awkward for some people well over 55. Suddenly going, my neighbours seem a bit interesting. It's all right. That's it for this section. You can make it into the next bit where we'll be talking about cheaters going to the gym. I guess that's starting counting push-ups at 99, and claims that Doctor Who is realistic. Why has he gone on strike? Find out more next.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. The Independent poll, the BBC says Doctor Who is reflecting the real world we live in, apart from the aliens, the time travel and the sonic screwdrivers.
Yeah, you can get them.
It is a bit of a reach, this. BBC expertly shuts down viewer complaints about Doctor Who's trans character. We'll always continue to proudly reflect the world we live in, the corporation said. I don't think I need to give context to the story. There's essentially that in one episode, or maybe it was in the same episode, I've not watched it, there was some misgendering. There was also some dead naming because they'd used the previous name held by the person who had transitioned to another name. Now, I don't think it does necessarily reflect the world we all live in. It might reflect the world the BBC would like us to live in, but if you look at it in terms of percentages, there are no trans aliens. That's a really small percentage of all the people. This is science fiction. So up until now, I've been just... This doesn't bother me. I'll be honest with you. Personally, on a personal level, this doesn't bother me. Because it's science fiction, let them do what they like. I'm not into Doctor Who.
You're really not, are you?
I'm not into Doctor Who.
You proved that twice.
Yeah. I tried to do that deliberately then, but it just looked like I got it wrong twice. I'm not really into it. And you know what? There's licence to be played with. It feels like they're always crowbarring everything in. It feels like they've taken everything they've got the BBC, no matter how old it is, and crowbarred in modern issue after progressive issue after ridiculous issue.
Nick, surely you like the fact that after that episode, when we get David Tennant back, the next episode, they clearly don't do diversity because there's only 2 characters in the whole thing and they play 4 of the people.
Oh, good. Well, I'm against...
They're both white.
Oh,
does that cheer you up?
Perfect. Yeah, I'm happy again. Well, I have to destroy Paul's point, sadly, which is the idea that it's science fiction, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't really stack up because you have things like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and it's whole mythology he's built. And people say, well, therefore, why can't you change the race of the characters? Well, it's because it destroys the whole point. And why not then have a Ferrari driving through the middle of the Orcs, you know, because it has to have a coherence or it's all pointless. But I think people are just sick of the shoehorning. Of course, I'll sound like a hateful old gammon, but we just had well, it was an old clip, actually, but the director of the new Star Wars saying she wanted to make men feel uncomfortable, which is bizarre because Star Wars is sort of a very male franchise. So why are they using things like Doctor Who and Star Wars to, you know, shoehorn woke stuff in, basically?
To the Daily Star, Nick, and people are going to the gym to have an affair, which is a good move, because when you go home panting, covered in sweat, no one thinks it's funny.
Are they, though? So the headline is cheating Brits are having cheeky flings in notorious hotbed this month. But you look at it, and the claim is that because testosterone spikes for an hour and things like that, you will suddenly have a fling, but it doesn't seem to be any data behind it. There's data that people go to the gym more in January, but not that they have an affair more, at least not in this piece, though it is the Star, so... I was expecting data.
Have you been to the gym recently, Paul, and what happened?
How dare you hesitate during that question? I was late arriving tonight because I went to the gym. No, I haven't been, and anyone who can flirt whilst at the gym it's got my full support. I mean, I can't breathe or talk. I'm like a slug at the end of the whatever machine I've tried to use.
Vending.
No one's coming up. Yeah, the vending machine. Yeah. Why won't my boost come out?
Apparently, fating is a thing now, which is dating at the. Where's the F come from? I'm not sure, but it's dating at the gym basically, and it's called fating. Probably. Have you been fating?
None of this. I mean, I used to go to the gym. I used to be quite the sportsman. Back in the previous century.
Darts player.
Darts player.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get... national hero is what you mean.
Yeah. To the Times, Paul, and a 62-year-old widow is to harvest her dead husband's sperm. And I can't even get my missus... Well, anyway, let's...
A widow 62 allowed to harvest her husband's sperm. And that's all we have time for tonight. No, it's not. Right, so an Australian court has given a 62-year-old woman permission to have sperm removed from her dead husband in a case that has raised troubling questions around the ethics of fertilisation involving older people. Now, she is 62. Her husband was 61 when he died. What are her plans for the sperm? I don't understand. Unless it's a substitute for blue tack, I really don't get what she's going to use it. I mean, fortunately, the woman is required to go back to court if she wants to use it, because you can't posthumously just randomly use a dead man's sperm.
Nick, you wanted birth rates to increase. Surely this is good news.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, I also feel bad, not to bring it down again, but the couple's daughter drowned on a fishing trip and their son was killed in a car accident. It's horrible. So I did sympathise a lot with this story and think, yeah, I understand.
Did you not think for a second that she might need investigating?
Well, there is that as well. But I also thought, why not, allow them this? But the only problem is the precedent, isn't it? If women think they can just kill off men and grab their sperm, the feminists will just be doing it all the time.
I'm worried that's what they've been trying to do for a long time.
We've got less than a minute to do this one, Paul. In the Metro, NASA has managed to lose an asteroid. Come on, guys, it's not rocket science.
Yeah, an asteroid the size of the Shard. I love it when they make a comparison with something ridiculous. That was predicted to hit our planet is no longer predicted to do so. This asteroid was called something asteroid 2007 FT3 because it was seen very, very briefly in 2007 for about a few minutes and disappeared, and then they did all the calculations, thought it was going to hit the Earth in October this year. Turns out it's not going to. Good night.
Surely this is more worrying, Nick, because it means there's a chance it might be trying to sneak up on us from behind, which is the worst kind of asteroid.
Yeah, I didn't think of that, although apparently it's only a 1 in 11.5 million chance. And we do get these asteroids that come close to the Earth, but close is considered within 30 million miles. So I have a lot of neurotic fears, but I might not add this one to the list just for now.
I came close to dating Pamela Anderson then.
Yeah. Well, the show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Friday's front pages. The Daily Mail says, no way back. The Telegraph goes with, Navy has so few sailors, ships must be scrapped. The Financial Times says Sunak signals election will be held in the second half of this year. The Eye, no tax cuts for 2 years under Labour, hints Starmer. The Guardian goes with, Labour will fight fire with fire, Starmer warns Tories. And the Daily Star, Operation Oompa Loompa. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Paul Cox and Nick Dixon. We are back tomorrow at 11 when Nick will return with Simon Evans and Leo Kearse. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. And whatever you do until then, have yourself a good one.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. While some of us may see a touch of frost and some fog patches tonight, there is still some heavy rain affecting southeastern parts. An area of low pressure has pushed its way up as we went through today, bringing some pretty heavy rain across southern areas, and that rain is now going to feed a little bit further northeastwards, affecting particularly East Anglia into Lincolnshire through this evening and overnight. Could cause some travel disruption and some further flooding is possible too, but that rain gradually trying to clear away through the early hours. A few showers elsewhere, but also some drier, clearer weather, particularly for inland areas, could allow for a touch of frost and also some patches of fog first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, a bit of a wet start for some eastern parts. A lot of that rain will clear away, but for Orkney, Shetland, some persistent rain continuing into the afternoon, perhaps a little bit of sleet here as well. Otherwise, some showers most likely for parts of Wales, Western England, maybe coastal showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but something a little bit drier drier and sunnier further inland. Temperatures for many staying in single figures. As we look towards Saturday, and it's going to be quite a cloudy story for eastern parts. A few showery outbreaks of rain likely here. Sunnier though further west, with just a few coastal showers possible. Some blustery winds quite likely for Scotland. Elsewhere, lighter winds as high pressure builds in, and that high pressure is likely to dominate through Sunday into Monday, bringing largely dry but chilly weather for many. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Good evening. The big New Year's speech came today from Sir Keir Starmer. He talked about change. He talked about hope. But is he really going to be the agent for change? We'll bring you an exclusive story about a new migrant hotel that's going to happen in Hampshire. Well, I say hotel. Actually, they're brand new, beautiful, purpose-built apartments. The local residents are not happy. And after that epic darts final last night, watched by almost 5 million people. The referee, the voice of darts, Russ Bray. That's the last final that he is going to referee. He joins me live in the studio. We ask, is darts about to take off as a game? But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, our top story from the GB newsroom tonight is that the Prime Minister has indeed confirmed he's working towards a general election in the second half of this year. Both Labour and the Liberal Democrats were pushing for a spring election, but the Prime Minister declined to rule that out, saying instead he wanted to focus on the economy, cutting taxes and tackling illegal migration. Meanwhile, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said he's ready to go to the polls now and criticised the Prime Minister for delaying the vote. He vowed to stand up for working people and said the character of politics will change if Labour wins power. More bad weather's on the way, with Nottinghamshire County Council today declaring a major incident along the River Trent because of rising flooding and rising river levels. That's as more heavy rain is forecast to hit the UK tonight. There is a yellow alert in regions right across southern England, from Cornwall all the way up east to Norfolk. Train operators are warning services could be cancelled and to check before travelling. Detectives investigating the murder of a teenager stabbed on New Year's Eve are appealing now for the public's help. They've released 2 images of people they want to identify and speak to after they were pictured in North London on Sunday night. 16-year-old Harry Pittman died during what's being described as an altercation as crowds gathered on Primrose Hill to watch New Year's Eve fireworks. Prince Andrew has been reported to the police by the campaign group Republic after more allegations of sexual assault were revealed in unsealed Epstein court documents. Bill Clinton and the late Professor Stephen Hawking are also among 150 other people mentioned in the documents detailing connections to the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Many of those named aren't accused of any wrongdoing, but the unsealed files were part of a civil lawsuit against Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's herself serving a 20-year sentence for recruiting underage girls for sex with Epstein. More documents are expected to be unsealed or unredacted in the coming days as well. Now, Lord David Cameron, the new Foreign Secretary, says attacks by Houthi rebels in the Red Sea must stop immediately. Lord Cameron made the comments during a visit to the NATO peacekeeping mission in Kosovo. Drone attacks by Iran-backed Houthis from Yemen in international shipping lanes have drawn widespread condemnation, with the UK, the US and other countries issuing a joint statement warning of consequences.
It's not just a British interest, this is a global interest. It really matters that ships are able to carry their cargoes without being attacked through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal and elsewhere in the world. That's why we sent ships to help with Prosperity Guardian. That's why we will use those ships to stop missile attacks. But the clear message here, and over 10 countries have signed a statement saying to the Houthis, these attacks are unacceptable, they're illegal, and they've got to stop. And if they don't stop, action will be taken.
That's the news on GB News, on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker. This is Britain's News Channel.
Good evening. It's difficult not to think that our politics and our elections are not becoming rather more like America. Why do I say that? Well, because in America, they have incredibly long election campaigns. Well, 2024 is only in its 4th day, and the election campaign has begun. Yes, of course, there's been some speculation that it could be in May. I would have thought that's unlikely. But Keir Starmer today giving his big speech. Let's just get a flavour of the style and the content of his speech.
The thought of millions of people right across our country putting a cross on that ballot paper. It's what we've been waiting for, preparing for, fighting for. A year of choice, a chance to change Britain, a clock that is ticking on this government. The power of the vote, the hope of change and renewal married to the responsibility of service. That's what I believe in. After 14 years with nothing good to show, no practical achievements to point towards, no purpose beyond the fight to save their own skins, this is their only project. They can't change Britain, so they will try to undermine the possibility of change itself.
So there was Keir Starmer, sleeves rolled up. I'm an action man. I'm ready for business. That's very much a style that he's adopted before. And What was the speech all about? Well, he used the word change 22 times. You know, I am the agent for change. He talked about hope. He talked about the importance of democracy. He talked about public service. And yes, of course, he had a dig at the Tories, saying basically they're there for power, for the sake of power. He said that he would clean up British politics. But I wondered at times in that speech who he was talking to. Was he aiming it at Labour Party activists? Was he aiming it